This story is shared to ensure no one else has to deal with this flea of a human being. It's going to be a wild ride, so grab your popcorn and get comfy. Back in June 2022, a woman from Victoria, Australia, met someone who introduced himself as Wilton Wallace on Hinge. She was 24 at the time, and he, claiming to be 28, was from Queensland but working in Victoria. They hit it off, and within a day of chatting, he asked to meet her in the city for drinks. He seemed friendly and cute, so she decided to get dressed up and give him a chance. Though her instincts were already tingling, she brushed it off as the usual nerves of a first date. He hadn't given her any red flags, yet. Wilton met her at Flinders Street Station. Her first impression was that he dressed really well, wearing a suit and long coat, clearly taking pride in his appearance. He was instantly affectionate, more than she was used to. Within seconds of meeting, he kissed her cheek, picked her up, squeezed her tightly, and held her hand. She was taken aback, but assumed it was cultural, given his Brazilian descent, where people are known to be forward. While it didn't alarm her, it was certainly unexpected. They decided to go for drinks, and he recommended a fancy bar that was way above her pay grade as a nurse. He insisted on covering the night's expenses. Very quickly, it became clear he was extremely chivalrous, charming, and an expert sweet talker. It felt like a soppy 2000s rom-com, and though she cringes now knowing the real him, it felt magical at the time. Wilton was incredibly open about his life, and because of that, she found herself being equally vulnerable. They had so much in common that everything just seemed to click. But as they say, if something feels too good to be true, it probably is. The life story he presented was as elaborate as it was false. According to him, he was born in Brazil to wealthy parents who lost everything after his father's death. His mother, unable to care for him and his 4 sisters, gave him up for adoption while keeping the girls. He claimed to have been adopted by a Portuguese family, living there from age 5 until 17. Apparently, he returned to Brazil at 17 to reconnect with his biological mother and eventually moved to Australia to study aerodynamics or some similarly impressive degree. By 2022, he was supposedly working as a manager for a shipping company in Queensland, flying to Melbourne for work every few weeks. His story touched her deeply, given her own traumatic upbringing of neglect, poverty, and being raised by her grandparents. Wilton had her in the palm of his slimy hands. At times, his cockiness and ego were off-putting, but he reassured her that people often misunderstood his confidence. He was self-aware enough to acknowledge this flaw, which disarmed her. The date progressed, and they had deep, meaningful conversations. He even suggested learning salsa together after she mentioned her love for dancing. When the studio he mentioned was fully booked, he invited her to his place to hang out. Against her better judgment, she agreed, though she made it clear she'd leave before midnight. At his apartment, he created a scene straight out of Crazy Stupid Love. He lit candles, played salsa music, poured heavy glasses of red wine, and offered to teach her salsa in his tiny living room. At that moment, it felt like a rom-com dream. Despite things getting heated between them, she stuck to her rule of not moving too fast, falling asleep fully clothed. The next morning, he took her out for breakfast before ordering her an Uber home. It was their first and only in-person meeting, and it was entirely PG rated. However, things quickly got strange. Within days, he started love-bombing her, showering her with grandiose gestures. He bought her lingerie, without knowing her size, jewelry for her birthday, just a week after meeting, and even planned an all-inclusive trip to Queensland. Against her better judgment, she agreed, thinking, YOLO. He promised a lavish trip involving private restaurants, helicopter rides, and yacht cruises. He even told her not to bring lingerie because he had it covered. By now, her red flag alarms were blaring. She started questioning everything. After some sleuthing with her housemate, they found his social media accounts on lockdown. His Instagram revealed little about his life, with photos limited to solo travel shots from years ago. A deeper dive revealed a group photo from 2016 where he was holding a woman with comments referring to them as a couple. Her digging intensified, leading her to a settlement document with both their names, confirming his full name, Wilton Wallace Veiga dos Santos. When she asked him to send his passport for safety, He complied but blacked out key details. Unfortunately for him, he failed to fully conceal his birth year, proving he was 36, not 28. When confronted, Wilton fabricated a story about a registration error in Portugal. She played along, suspecting more lies. Over weeks, he kept canceling and rescheduling their Queensland trip. Eventually, he claimed his grandmother in Portugal had fallen ill, and later, passed away. Fed up, she contacted the woman from the earlier photo, who revealed shocking truths. Wilton had fabricated everything: his age, upbringing, and career. He was born and raised in Brazil, had siblings, not sisters, and never lived in Portugal. His ex-wife shared how he was emotionally and financially abusive, using her to fund his lifestyle. The pattern repeated with multiple women, all believing his lies. Furious, the woman ghosted him, knowing it would infuriate a narcissist like him. She later tricked him into taking a long trip to a rural town where he'd be stranded for hours. Once he arrived, she sent a final message exposing his lies, blocked him, and never looked back. The experience taught her a valuable lesson: trust your instincts, do your research, and don't fall for a sweet-talking fraud. Hopefully, Wilton's web of lies has unraveled and no one else falls victim to his manipulations.